Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special edition of the Rowing Chat podcast. This is the podcast for the sport of rowing. I'm Rebecca Caro. I started this in 2013, so we're just coming up to our 10th anniversary. And today I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast for the second time, Mahe Drysdale.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you going?
Good to see you again. The newly retired Mahe Drysdale, who I hugely enjoyed seeing the singles race that you guys did at the World Championships. That was just such a genius idea and a great send-off.
Yeah, it was. It was a genius idea. It wasn't that enjoyable when you're unfit and fat and not rowing well. But I enjoyed the 10 days in Europe. I just had to suffer through 2 minutes of pain, so it wasn't all bad.
And as I was remarking to you earlier, you all got medals at the end, so that was lovely.
Yeah, that was good. I think I ended up finishing about third, which was pretty good.
Yeah, I was. You weren't out the back door, buddy.
Well, I was, but then they waited for me, and I sort of snaked them on the line, so that was pretty good.
Oh, that old trick.
Yeah.
I think this is the moment where I say, welcome to Masters Rowing, Mahe. This is the sort of thing we do all the time.
Yeah, I won't be doing it all the time, that's for sure. I need a bit longer, I think, to forget how I used to be able to row and not expect to be able to do that anymore.
It's quite interesting. Intellectually, your body remembers your peak delivery, and then when it can't do what you're asking it to do, it's a real mental challenge.
Yeah, well, I think I actually felt quite good for about 20 strokes. I thought, oh yeah, it's not all bad. And then the last sort of 40 were pretty average. So
that is, listeners, that is the art of New Zealand understatement. Pretty average. Now, Mahe, that wasn't why we were agreeing to have a talk today. I recently read a newspaper article that talked about a new group that you have been part of forming called the Athletes Co-operative. Would you tell us a little bit about it and why now is the time to form a cooperative of athletes?
Yeah, so I guess this has been brewing for a lot of years. And it's a group of athletes at the moment, rowing and cycling athletes in New Zealand at the elite level. And it's, I guess, a group that we hope to have some input into the decisions that are made in sport in this country. We want to be part of the process of making sport better and making the important decisions that affect our everyday lives. And that's I guess the crux of it, and we are trying to work alongside High Performance Sport New Zealand, cycling and rowing to get better outcomes for athletes.
So for those of us who are not professional athletes and never have been, can you explain what has the system been now to date? Because as we see it, you compete at the national championships, you get invited to final trials, selections get made, and at some point you get asked to be part of the New Zealand rowing team. How does that work?
Yeah, so I guess from a higher level, the government give Sport New Zealand money every year, and that's to run from grassroots right through to elite sport. And now that is then sent from Sport New Zealand to High Performance Sport New Zealand. High Performance Sport New Zealand is generally their role is to win on the world stage, and then they make funding decisions around what sports will deliver the medals and the results that they want. So then they distribute funds to those individual sports, and that's the rowing and the cycling and the triathlon, etc. in New Zealand. And then those sports, I guess, get the athletes together and run an organisation to deliver what they've promised. So over the years, generally rowing New Zealand, it has been the best funded sport in New Zealand since the previous iterations, as well as high performance sport, has been involved, and that is purely for the fact we've delivered more Olympic medals than any other sport in that time. So, that is basically the sort of generalization of how how the system works in New Zealand. So I guess the issue is high performance sport in New Zealand make a lot of decisions, and there is no athlete input into those decisions. So where the money goes, how it's spent, is fairly well decided at a high performance sport level. By the time it comes down to Rowing New Zealand, for example, their sort of funding is in buckets, and they have to use that funding how high performance sport has kind of distributed that funds. And high performance sport also employ a lot of people. Those people will support the sports and support the funding, and I guess the performance of the athletes, and that's through sports scientists or doctors, physios, masseuses, strength trainers. All those sort of people are employed by a high performance sport and allocated to the sports as part of it. So as athletes, we just want some input into how those funds are distributed. We believe we're in a position that we can we know what it takes to perform. I've been involved in the system for 20 years, and I guess as part of that, some of that money is allocated to athletes and the funding that athletes get, and that in our case it's through a grant at the moment, and so that basically pays our our living costs. But I guess one of the bugbears we have is there is 132 people as at June 21 at Sport New Zealand and High Performance Sport New Zealand that are paid over $100,000 a year, and the most you can make as an athlete is I think now $75,000 a year as a gold medalist. So there's a bit of a disparity there, that the people delivering the results are not getting rewarded at the same level as the people supporting the performance. And my personal view is that's not right. But it's a wider than just the athlete sort of payments. We certainly want to co-design the system. Obviously, there's been a lot of issues in sport, especially high performance sport, around welfare, around there's been a lot of reviews done over the years about what's wrong with sport. And what we're saying as athletes is let's co-design the system so that we can work together and make a system that's better for everyone. And we want a seat at the table to have some input into those decisions.
And is it just a case that cycling and rowing are the sports that have come to the fore to voice this? Because Kirsty is an ex-rower as well, isn't she, from your colleague?
Yeah, so Kirsty is my co-chair, and she has a rowing background, but also in cycling. Her I guess her main results are from cycling. So she's pretty well placed. Why is it only rowers and cyclists? Well, I guess we both sort of were designing systems and came together, realized that we're quite aligned in what we wanted. And it made sense, that we could actually work together and form a stronger union. So that's why it's those two sports. We would absolutely like to open that up to any sport, Olympic sport in New Zealand that's sort of funded through High Performance Sport New Zealand. The reason that we haven't done that at this stage is that it just adds complexity. And also we don't have the resources to do that properly. So, we want to start here, and then we'll kind of see where that leads. But absolutely, over time, we hope we can add other athletes in if they feel what we're doing is beneficial.
Now, the article that I read said that the Athletes Co-operative was set up in June this year in opposition to High Performance Sport New Zealand's attempts to establish an athlete voice mechanism. Now, my reading of that is that they tried to do something and you felt it was inadequate. Can you explain a little more context about what was offered by High Performance Sport New Zealand?
Yeah, so this I guess, comes to absolutely the crux of this matter. So, sorry. December 2019, a group of athletes sat down with the powers that be at Sport New Zealand and High Performance Sport New Zealand, and it was decided at that meeting that there needed to be some athlete representation, and more input into the system. And so we all kind of left that meeting feeling pretty good. We worked alongside them for the next couple of months, sort of had some input into ideas. They basically then said, thank you, we will employ someone to go away and work on this, and we'll come back to you, once we have figured out how this will work. So straight away we were like, well, no, that's not right. This is a system that we want to work together on to co-design, so that it sort of suits us both. So that's basically how it started. They then came up with a framework, put out an RFP to say, this is what we're looking for. What groups out there are available to run this. I guess as a group, we kind of looked at it and we said, no, this doesn't work for us. This is not how we envisaged it. So we decided to create our own organisation. And we do think this. So basically, what happened is the NZOC's athlete commission, sort of they bid on the RFP, and they have got the funding from HBSNZ to run the Athletes Leadership Network. Now, we very much support the work they're doing in developing leaders, but we don't feel like they are a representative body. They are not independent. And we feel that they are compromised in what they are doing, and they have said that they are actually an athlete voice mechanism, sort of comparatively to an athlete representative group. And there's sort of a bit of a it sounds very similar, but an athlete representative group represents, I guess, athletes. An athlete voice mechanism in its way is basically an opportunity to speak, but have no real power. And I think what will happen is very much what happened with the ALN, that HBSNZ will listen, they'll go and create a system, and then say this is what we're going to do, rather than actually sitting down at a table and saying, but let's co-design something that works for all of us. So that's I guess a bit of a summary, and how we've got to where we are. So now it's a matter of trying to get some traction and have High Performance Sports sit down with us and actually discuss the issues, and make the changes required that we work together to make the system better.
And in order to force this conversation, you have decided that a legal challenge is the way to go.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and we have chosen to go down the route of the Employment Relations Authority. And again, this sort of comes back to, there's a very big power imbalance in this country and in this space, where the powers that be, I guess, have all the power, and the athletes just listen and do what they're told. And so the Employment Relations Authority route sort of balances that power out, and it's used obviously for employees to work alongside their employers and come up with a collective agreement. So that's sort of the route we've gone down, and as I say, mainly to try to balance that power, so that we're all sort of sitting equally around the table and not being dictated to.
And so, just looking into the future, let's make an assumption that an agreement is made. Would you hope that, what are the areas you would hope that athletes would have input into? Is it just financial and budgets, or is there more?
Oh, it's much more than that, and probably the big thing is the welfare of athletes. We want a system that we're proud of. We want a system that treats us with respect, and that we feel valued. I guess is really the crux of it, and it's we don't think it's that hard to achieve that. With a small sort of few little tweaks. And I guess as an athlete, it's frustrating when you're told this is the most that you can earn, even though you're delivering the results. When you see them make decisions that we perceive as I guess wasteful. And even with all these reviews that are happening, the same thing just happens over and over again. There's a review, they say we hear it, we're going to make changes. So they employ more people, and that just costs the system more. But those people don't necessarily lead it into better outcomes or for that matter performance. So I guess we just want a seat at the table to say, okay, let's see what the issues are and let's deal with the underlying issue rather than trying to put a band-aid on top and solve it that way.
And would you expect the organisation which the NZOC have set up to be a part of that? Would it be a three-way discussion at the table?
Potentially. And, I think it's still unclear as to how and what they are going to do. If it's purely an athlete voice mechanism, I just don't think there's going to be any change. They'll have their say, but the changes won't reflect what they're saying. So that's why we feel like we need a little bit more of a powerful and have some mandate to be able to what we say is listened to, that potentially we have to sign off on some decisions that affect us directly. I think that would be a more workable solution.
Now, can I just ask contextually, are athletes employed by their federation?
So at the moment they're not, but it's a very much a grey area. So as I say, there's grants handed from High Performance Sport New Zealand to Rowing New Zealand, and then handed on to the athletes. And as part of getting that grant, you have to sign a contract where you give up most of your rights, and obviously they dictate where you train, when you train, all those sort of things. So the relationship in essence is that of an employee, yet the athletes get no benefit or rights that an employee would. And it's sort of an interesting one, obviously, around selection, things like that. They can end your contract as soon as you don't get selected. And you have no sort of recourse to that. Whereas if and again, I guess just a little bit of a side, if someone does a bad job, as an employee supporting the athletes, it's very hard to get rid of them. And obviously they would get severance pay and etc. if they were to be fired or told to move on. So it's I think in essence we are employees, and high performance sport, because of the decisions they make, they are ultimately the employer. But obviously it's something that has not been sort of tested, and that's where we're sort of going at the moment.
Would you align this with the fights of the Uber drivers and other people in the gig economy who act like employees but don't get the legal protections?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar. And I think the thing about it is we are open-minded around, the employee issue. The key is we sit and sit at the table and negotiate a collective agreement. And just for an example, rugby players are employees in this country. The cricketers are independent contractors. So there is room, and we absolutely believe that we are employees, but we're absolutely willing to allow the process, I guess, to determine what is best for both organisations. But at the moment we see the employee route as being the best for us in all the protection and the system that offers us.
In other countries, do they have athletes unions, or are you a world first?
Well, do they? Well, you've got rugby, cricket. The netballers all have associations right now, and unions. I think in the Olympic sports space, we are one of the first, and this is a landmark case in the world in the fact that most Olympic sports are treated very similarly to us. So we know of a lot of countries watching on with interest to see the outcome of this and what has to change. But I think this is a sort of moment in time that we have an opportunity to lead the world and show them what is possible. And this is not us versus them. We actually want to get alongside and work with high performance sport to design a system that works better for all of us. And at the end of the day, it's high performance sport, so results are king, and that's ultimately what we want. But at the moment, I think athletes are treated as a commodity and replaceable, and that is somewhat true, but we believe you can treat athletes well, and we can all come out at the end of your careers feeling pretty good that you've all worked together to achieve these results.
Certainly on the World Rowing stage, there is an athletes commission that FISA World Rowing runs, and my understanding is they are reasonably influential, particularly with a lot of new decisions about things like redrawing lanes at regattas when it's windy from the side and things like that. So would you see that as a good model for a sort of working cooperation?
Yes and no. Yes, they have had some wins, I guess, and making it better for athletes. But I think even from their perspective, there's a lot of decisions that they make and recommendations that they make that are overturned at a higher level. And that's kind of that sort of almost athlete voice versus athlete representation. Like, if it directly affects athletes, like fairness, that should be absolutely an athlete commission decision, and whatever they decide basically stands. As I understand it, that goes back. They make recommendations that goes back to the FISA executive, and FISA executive make the final call. So I think in those sort of things, there needs to be a little bit more listening to the athletes and doing what's best, because I've been around for 20 years, and fairness has been something that has reared its ugly head for so many years, and it's been talked about. It's been there's been different things, and like it seems a very simple decision to make, that the higher seeded crews going into each round get to choose the lanes first. You completely wipe out any fairness or unfairness results if you get to choose your own lane, and to say that has to be almost a decision as you line up for the start, because conditions can change in the 30 minutes that you're out there. But you kind of earn that right to choose that lane, and if you choose the wrong one, well, you can't complain that it was unfair. If you've had that decision to make.
Certainly there would be structural governance changes needed organisationally for something like the fairness example you just gave to be delegated in its entirety to the athletes' voices. But that's something that could probably be brought in over a couple of years. So it's not impossible, but there would need to be a serious amount of willingness for an executive to give up their controlling decision making in an area as important as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that's just one sort of small example, but it's one that is so, like, it makes the athlete, the FISA executive have no real should have no real input into that, because it so affects athletes, and it doesn't really affect them. And what we've seen in the past is fairness takes about half an hour to figure out whether it's fair, because they want to see 3 or 4 races that are unfair until they make a decision. And that to me, from an athlete's perspective, that can be your whole career, is decided on a race, or if it's a semi or a quarter final. That can affect your funding. Where we need results for our funding. So it has massive ramifications for us. But as an executive at FISA, well, it has no real ramifications for you, apart from a few people saying, "Oh, that was unfair," and this is not right. I think that's just putting the decisions where the decisions should be lying, and when it's such a big decision for athletes, that's who should be making these calls.
What's the next date that you have for progressing the Athletes Co-operative?
Yeah, so we have got to a hearing with the Employment Relations Authority. So that happens in February, and I guess until we go through that, that's sort of the next phase as to whether we can progress and sit down and start collective bargaining.
Mahe, I wish you and the Athletes Co-operative all the best in your endeavours, and perhaps may I invite you back to give us an update afterwards?
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep in touch as the year goes on. It's I can't say too much, unfortunately, right now, just around that process. But as that sort of progresses on, I'm sure we can talk a bit more.
If anyone wants to find out more about the Athletes Co-operative, where can they get that information?
At the moment, obviously, just where we are in the process. There is a bit in the media. If you search it, the Athletes Co-operative in New Zealand, you'll find a few articles. But as I say, we're just having to be a little bit tight-lipped, around what we can and can't talk about, because we are in a legal process. But this will start becoming public. The hearing in February is public, so it will sort of come out, and we, as I say, we will be able to talk more. But we don't want to compromise what we're doing.
Mahe, thank you for your time, and we will speak hopefully again at some point in the future.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca.
That has been Rowing Chat with me and Mahe Drysdale, and until next time.